Today, we're diving into a deeply unsettling story, one that sits right at the intersection of child stardom, severe mental illness, and just unimaginable tragedy. We're looking at the case of Ryan Grantham, a Canadian actor whose career looked so promising before it took a horrifying turn, ending in a crime that absolutely shocked everyone who knew him. So, how does someone with that much potential end up doing something so unthinkable? Let's try to figure this out together.
Right? It's the question that just hangs over this entire story. Grantham wasn't some random person. He was an actor you've probably seen in hit TV shows, in major films. So to even begin to understand what happened, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning and trace the path that led him from a film set to a prison cell. Before all the darkness set in, Ryan Grantham's life was really defined by his budding career. He was making it in an industry that's all about creating dreams. But beneath that shiny surface, the foundations of his life were already cracked, which kind of set the stage for both his early success and his catastrophic fall. When you look at this timeline, you can really see the storm brewing in his early life. Born in 1998, his father left when he was very young, which created this huge void and fueled these deep-seated feelings of abandonment. Then, on top of that, he goes to school and gets mercilessly bullied for his height and a speech impediment. So for him, finding acting at just 9 years old, well, it was more than a hobby. It was a lifeline. It was a place where he could finally escape the pain of his own life. But through all of that early chaos, there was one constant, shining light in his life. His mother, Barbara Waite. She was his rock, his biggest fan, the engine that drove his entire career. Friends and family all said she was this incredibly warm, funny person who just poured unconditional love into her kids. She was the one driving him thousands of miles to auditions because she truly believed in him. Their bond was incredibly, incredibly close, which, as you'll see, makes the end of this story all the more heartbreaking. And with his mom's amazing support, Ryan's escape into acting really became a legitimate career. He started to build a real name for himself, achieving a level of success that most actors only dream of. But the entertainment industry is notoriously brutal, especially for child actors. And make no mistake, he was genuinely talented. He landed a role in the huge series Supernatural, where he played a kid who uses powers to get revenge on his bullies, a detail that is just chillingly similar to his own life. He even got to share the screen with massive stars like Johnny Depp. By the time he was 13, he was winning awards and snagging his first lead role. Everything was pointing up. It looked like he was on his way. But then the momentum just stopped. And what we see here is a classic, tragic trap for child actors. He hit that so-called awkward age for casting. He's not a cute kid anymore, but he's not quite an adult lead either. The steady roles just dried up, and they were replaced by tiny, infrequent parts. Now, for someone whose entire identity and self-worth was wrapped up in his acting career, this was absolutely devastating. All those old feelings of being unwanted from his childhood came rushing right back. This is where the story takes a very, very dark turn. As his career flatlined, the psychological issues he'd been fighting his whole life came roaring back, but with a vengeance. And this time, they were fueled by new, dangerous influences that would send him into a terrifying spiral. And it really seems like it was a perfect storm of factors. His severe depression and social anxiety came back, and he started self-medicating heavily with marijuana just to numb the feeling of being a failure. He dropped out of school and moved back home. Then the COVID-19 pandemic hits, and his isolation becomes total. It was during this time that he fell down this rabbit hole on the dark web, becoming obsessed with graphic videos of murder and violence. This led to a fixation on serial killers and, most notably, the movie Joker, where he saw a dark reflection of his own feelings of being an outcast. His private thoughts, which he started writing down in a diary, became more and more violent. He wasn't just watching this dark content anymore, he was starting to plan his own acts of violence. This entry from his journal is just bone-chilling. It shows this desire not just to hurt people, but to be remembered for something huge, something awful. And this timeline here, it shows just how fast things went downhill. In 2019, it starts with the Joker obsession. By early 2020, the pandemic lockdown basically removes any social buffers he might have had left. And then, by March of that year, his violent fantasies had turned into a specific, horrifying plan. He was meticulously mapping out how to assassinate the Prime Minister of Canada. But before he tried to do that, he decided he had to do something else first. We're now at the most tragic and just incomprehensible part of this story. Because in his mind, to become the monster he wanted to be,
he first had to get rid of the one person who had only ever shown him love. His reasoning was so completely warped by his illness, he decided he had to murder his mother, Barbara. But in his twisted logic, this wasn't an act of hate. He somehow convinced himself it was an act of mercy. He felt he was sparing her the pain and shame of seeing what he was about to do, of seeing her son become a mass murderer. It's a terrifying glimpse into just how broken his reality had become. So on the evening of March 31st, 2020, he put his plan into motion. While his mother, completely unaware, was playing the piano, Ryan sat on the stairs behind her. He was holding a rifle, and he sat there for nearly 15 minutes just watching her, rehearsing it in his mind. When she finished her song, he walked up quietly behind her, raised the rifle, and shot her once in the back of the head.
Just moments after the murder, he pulls out a GoPro camera and starts filming a confession. In the video, which was later shown in court, his voice is eerily calm and detached, but you can see his hands are just trembling. He pans the camera over to his mother's body and says these words, acknowledging he had just killed the only person in the world who truly loved him. His only explanation? I was broken.
His behavior right after this is almost impossible to process. He didn't panic. He didn't call anyone. Instead, he covered his mother's body with a sheet, set up candles and a rosary around her in some kind of bizarre ritual, and then just spent the rest of the night watching Netflix and drinking beer, all while her body was just a few feet away. But here's the thing. Killing his mother wasn't the end of his plan. In his mind, it was just the beginning. The next day, he set out to complete the mission that he had been planning for months.
The next morning, he packs his car with 3 guns, tons of ammunition, and a dozen Molotov cocktails he'd made himself. He had a map to the Prime Minister's residence, and he started what would have been a 50-hour drive across the country. But something in him broke. After just a few hours on the road, maybe a moment of clarity hit him, maybe it was just exhaustion, but he turned the car around. He then briefly considered committing a mass shooting at his old university, before finally he drove to a Vancouver police station and just gave himself up.
He walked in and calmly told an officer, "I killed my mother." And of course, the police found all the evidence they needed, the video confession, his detailed diaries, all the weapons in his car. Meanwhile, it was his sister, Lisa, who made the horrific discovery of their mother's body, an event that has left her with severe, lasting trauma. Now, despite his obvious mental health issues, psychiatrists determined he was aware of his actions and knew they were wrong, so he pleaded guilty and avoided a full trial. In the end, Ryan Grantham was sentenced to life in prison. But the really crucial number here, the one that stands out from the sentencing, is this one, 14. He has to serve 14 years before he can even be considered for parole. That means he could be back on the streets by the time he's 37 years old. And that brings us to the final lingering question, doesn't it? The story of Ryan Grantham is extreme for sure, but it forces us to look at the immense pressure we put on young performers, the devastating impact of untreated mental illness, and just how easily someone can get lost in the dark corners of the internet. It's a chilling reminder of how a promising life can completely and totally unravel, leaving all of us to wonder, what signs were missed? And can a tragedy like this ever really be prevented?